From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From Radio Row down here at the Montreal Convention Center, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I am your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast. Is Andre Johnson
Jr.
Do not forget the Jr. is very important to remember the JR at the end of the name. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, share, rate, review if you are watching us on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, get the notification. But when we drop that fire content, my goodness, do we have a banger for you guys today. It is Friday. We are moving right along here on Radio Row, Super Bowl week. We've had a good stretch here doing the pods from out here, and today might have been our best day yet with some interviews we were able to get.
Oh yeah, we got some icons. We got a quick walk and talk with the greatest Saint of all time in Drew Brees, one of the most iconic Saints of all time. Jimmy Graham sat down with us to do a quick podcast take today. We also got the rising star of last season, the guy who came in mid-season and completely changed that Saints passing game in Marquez Valdes-Scantling. And you know, we've been talking about Kellen Moore a lot on this podcast. So we talked to Brooks Kubena, who works for The Athletic out in Philadelphia. He's very familiar with the Eagles and their offensive coordinator, who may soon be the Saints head coach. So we sat down with all of them today.
Brooks had some tremendous insights.
Absolutely.
So be sure to stick around for that. So check it out. Without further ado, here's our interview number one, the Saints legend, Jimmy Graham. Pleased to be joined now by the one and only former Saints tight end, Jimmy Graham. And Jimmy, thank you for joining the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. First off, back home, or your second home here in New Orleans. This is the Convention Center, Super Bowl kind of setup here. What do you think of the city's sort of ability to host the Super Bowl, how it's gone so far this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's been incredible. There's probably not a better city to throw an event like this. I think this puts on display just New Orleans' ability to host big events like this, and just, how the city is able to make it so confined most of the time, because I've been to a couple of these Super Bowls. From event to event, it's miles and miles. Where you're going from, like in Arizona, you had stuff in Scottsdale, stuff over here, and it's taking 2 hours to get somewhere. Here, most everything's walkable. And then obviously between all the restaurants, I think I've answered probably 150 text messages. I just copied and pasted all the restaurants that guy should go to. So, I think it's awesome to put the city on display and really their ability to host something like this.
And just wandering around the city, I know we've seen about 15 former Saints. I know you've seen a lot of your former teammates. I assume you guys don't get to see each other that often on the norm. What's it like just being around so many guys you went to war with?
Oh, yeah. Well, I just did Cam's podcast. I was on Roman's earlier. So, it's really been almost like a reunion for us, being able to catch up, being able to see just, what guys are doing and where they are, and just, talk about family and everything. But for us, that also causes a problem because I've got about 500 people I got to see, and I'm here for 48 hours. So, it's going to be a hard task to fill, but it's obviously a blessing.
One of your former teammates we talked to yesterday was Marcus Colston. He said, obviously 15 years to the day they won the Super Bowl. You weren't on that team, but he always says, and every other former Saint I've talked to says the 2011 team was the one that got away. That was the one that got away. What do you remember about that year? And that was almost perfect offensive football that year. I mean, what do you remember about that 2011 team, and how devastating was that you guys couldn't finish the job?
Yeah, I mean, we had matchup problems all over the place. I remember specifically there were times where Sean, before we went onto the field to take a first down, he would ask us to try and extend the drive to 12-plus plays to give the defense a break because we're scoring too fast. And so I've never had that conversation since. But that's literally how it was. We had matchups everywhere. We were unstoppable on third down. We shattered every record known to man. I think 4 of us had 1,000 yards. Drew's ability to get the ball where it needed to go and to understand where the matchup was unmatched. And to go in, and especially for me, that was a heartbreak too, because I was always looking for like my moment, in the NFL, and usually your moment leads into a Super Bowl. After I think I scored with 1:24 to go, and that was supposed to be my moment, and nobody even remembers it anymore. So, that's what's unfortunate about it.
You mentioned Drew just now. I want to ask you about 2 more of your quarterbacks you played with last year. Number one, Derek Carr, someone who's talked about a lot in this city, but has done a lot of good in a black and gold uniform. And another guy who's kind of been the star of Super Bowl weekend and hasn't played it down, Jameis Winston.
Yeah. Playing with Derek was incredible because I knew a lot of guys who had played with him before. I already heard about the type of person he was. Man, he plays a chip on his shoulder, but he also, he gives from his heart. He looks to do a lot in the community, and it was awesome to be able to share kind of a log. I think I was 3 down from him, so we spent a lot of time together, and obviously, to catch my first touchdown back in the stadium from him was wild. That was my first touchdown with that Saints uniform in that stadium caught that wasn't Drew Brees. So, that was the first ever, and, it was an incredible moment. But, and then Jameis, I mean, the dude is special, right? Me and him shared a lot last year. I remember we were both doing Peace Squad at one point, just shredding up our defense. That was incredible. He's a special person, man. He truly is so genuine, makes everything absolutely hilarious. And, it's awesome to see kind of, him transitioning and stepping right into an unbelievable role that he fits perfect. So I'm excited for him.
I don't want to open up old wounds, but we talked a little bit about it before we came on. How much did it crush you to get traded from here?
Oof. Yeah, I'm still not over it. Yeah. I mean, most likely if I didn't get traded, I wouldn't have blown my knee out either. I was doing so much in the community down here that I was committed to here, and everywhere on the East Coast is doing a lot of charity work. So my first 3 months there, I had to take 13 red eyes back here, just sitting in that position, get off the plane and go right to practice, because I already had these commitments out there to people. And but what could have been and what should have been is really hard. At the time, me, Gronk, we're always battling for things. I had Gronk beaten in yards, catches, touchdowns. And so the only thing on my mind was Super Bowls.
Right.
And so, when I look at some of those later years, 18, 19, I don't even think the game would have even been that close for any of those things to happen. So, it's always bittersweet because me and Drew were headed to shatter every record that had ever been put up. We weren't able to finish what we started. So that's always something I'll never get over.
Yeah. I'm curious, during the offseason, you see like Travis Kelce, George Kittle kind of have these tight end camps. Yeah. Is that something that was going on back when you were in the league? And if not, how cool is it that this position has kind of come together like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's cool that, that one, the position across the league has gotten a lot closer. Before, I would say there was, it was a different league back in the day, where people weren't trying to give away trade secrets, right? Everyone had their own little deal and what they were good at, and nobody was trying to, have their position taken or their spot taken or their what they had built. It's really cool to see them all getting together. Me, I never was a part of something like that. I always had Jonathan Vilma. So, I was always with the linebackers every offseason, working out with Swayze down at the University of Miami. So, but it's awesome to see really where the tight end position has come. Now you have Goddard, Travis Kelce in this Super Bowl. It's going to be an unbelievable matchup. Seeing how they're going to take advantage, third down and red zone. It's cool to see all across the league that I think everyone realizes it's almost impossible to make it to the Super Bowl if you don't have a dominant tight end.
So catch us up, Jimmy. What's life been like? I know you came back here for a season, and since then, what's sort of life been like for you? I know you're down in Miami right now?
Yeah, I'm down in Miami right now. Just, I got the company, we're opening up a debt fund this year, but really the focus has been on the Arctic Challenge 2025. So the website's the arcticchallenge2025.org. We're going to be setting 5 world records, rowing across the Arctic Ocean, raising money for several charities here in New Orleans, one of them being the Covenant House New Orleans, sheltered that took care of 700 kids last year, homeless. Yeah. And then Laureus, which is organization that gets kids involved with sports. And so, great cause, but it'll be one of the most brutal things I've ever been a part of. Our training camps have been brutal. Last week we had our first open sea trial, and I'm still tired. Yeah.
What made you want to do that? Because when you say that to the normal person, they're like, "You're doing what?
Oh,
Where?"
Yeah. Oh yeah. When I say it to anybody, especially rowers, like when I tell another rower this, they're like, "What?" And so, there's been 16 people to ever do this route. So there's been more people on the moon that have attempted this. But really, this started at Cambridge with my boy. So my Navy SEAL friend, he's the captain of the boat, and this has always been his dream to do this on an ocean. So I'm helping him realize that dream. But really, the charity aspect of it. So when I got to New Orleans and I made the team last year, I got an apartment, and right across the street I noticed a building. And first thing I did was I texted my CFO and I said, hey, what's this building? Because I knew it had to be some type of government facility because I had been in very similar places. And it turned out to be a children's homeless shelter. And I told him, hey, whatever we do, I want to make sure I do something for these kids. So I thought I was going to go over and speak and say something, but it looks like we're going to be rowing across an ocean for them. So it'd be pretty cool.
Hey.
You know,
That's
speaking,
awesome.
rowing across an ocean, tomato.
Hey,
Yeah.
it all works. All right. Jimmy, I can't thank you enough for stopping by here. I know you got a busy day, so it's been real. It's been fun going down memory lane, and best of luck, my friend.
It's good to see you
All
boys,
right.
man.
Always
good
good.
luck. Good luck the rest of the weekend.
Yeah,
Thank you.
too. All righty, Jimmy Graham.
Remember practicing at the University of Miami, and just, I don't know, everything just seemed to be smooth, you know? And maybe that was just because Sean Payton had created the vision for what the week was going to be like, and everything just kind of worked out that way. Maybe he just kind of helped us set an expectation and meet the expectation. But yeah, everything just seemed to be smooth. I haven't, other than what I've never met him before, other than just, and all I have to go off of is just his track record. And he's been successful wherever he's gone. He's obviously an extremely bright offensive mind. I mean, coaching the Super Bowl here, right? Done a great job with that Philly offense. So I think he's got a lot of great pieces to work with the Saints, if that is the case. I think we saw what the Saints offense can be when everyone's healthy. You know, earlier in the year, unfortunately, they were just decimated by injury. I still think we have a very stout defense, been a top 10 defense for the last 8 years in a row or so. So I think all the pieces in place, continue to add through free agency in the draft. But look, and the division's wide open. That's the bottom line too, is you look at the division, like who really scares you? Yes, Carolina, ascending team with Bryce Young. Yes, Atlanta, ascending team with Michael Penix. Tampa's kind of, been the one who's had kind of a stronghold on it the last few years, but, I think they're aging. And so bottom line is, man, the opportunity's there.
Very pleased to be joined now by Saints wide receiver Marquez Valdes-Scantling, MVS.
Yes, sir.
Joins the Fox 8 Overtime podcast. Thanks for joining us here. First off, what is kind of your thoughts of the Super Bowl scene as we've kind of walked around here today?
Man, I haven't been here in a minute because
Yeah.
I've been playing in them for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So I forgot what this whole thing is about.
Yeah.
It's cool though, man. I got to, get some media time in that I haven't really got to do in a couple of years, and got to see some old friends and, get in front of a camera outside of a football setting, and it's been cooler vibe.
When you came to the Saints, you really made an immediate impact and provided a dimension to this offense that it had really been missing. How good did that feel?
Yeah, I mean, it was great. That was the intent. Obviously, leaving Buffalo, I just wasn't, in a space where I feel like I could do things that I wanted to do and help that team. They end up going off and having a great season, playing for a conference championship. But I feel like I wasn't a part of that, and so I wanted to get to a place where I feel like I can help a team. And when I was able to come in here, and they needed some help at that time, especially with losing a bunch of wideouts, and I was able to come in and play right away, and it turned out great.
How do you approach this offseason? You're a free agent, but you're coming off a really good second half of the season, obviously, with the Saints. What's your approach, even though you're not really quite sure what the next step will be?
Man, there's no pressure, man.
Yeah.
Just leave it in God's hands. Whatever is meant for me, what will happen. I've played more than enough football and put enough good stuff on tape that I know I can still play, and teams know I can still play. But I would obviously love to be back here in New Orleans. I think it was a great fit. My short tenure here, I fell in love with the city. The teammates accepted me with open arms. Hopefully we can figure out something to make it work. So I'll let my agent and those guys talk it all out. But I would love to be back in New Orleans because it's been a great place for me.
Someone who you clicked with almost immediately was Derek Carr.
Yeah.
He's someone who really gets talked about a lot in this Saints fandom. What were your impressions of getting to play with Derek Carr?
Man, I thought Derek was great. Obviously, I played with some of the best quarterbacks to ever play this game. Playing with Aaron my first 4 years, and then going to Pat, and then even playing with Josh for a little bit. I think his talent is up there with those guys. And I don't understand the hatred that Derek gets, even when he was playing for the Raiders. I think he's a hell of a teammate, and a hell of a player, a great leader of men, and you can just see the difference, when he's playing and when he's rolling, man. I think he throws a really good football, super easy to catch, man, and that's that's difficult, at this level. And he's definitely one of the nicest guys that you'll ever be around. Great teammate, great leader, and I wish him nothing but the best. And I hope that we get to continue to make some more plays together.
Have you been following the Saints coaching search at all? Kind of keep up with some of the names. I know it's
obviously you can't do anything but open your Twitter and and see it, but I haven't, because I don't even know if I'll be here. So I'm not gonna put a bunch of invested time into the unknown. So whoever they hire, I'm sure they'll be a great guy, or even if they bring Riz back. I thought Riz did a great job with the hand that he was dealt, and getting guys to believe in that team that we could turn it around. Even though our playoff chances were slim to none, man, he still had us out there playing hard every single week, and I think that is very hard to do for a professional football team with nothing to play for.
Having played for the Chiefs, obviously, I don't know how much of a rooting interest you have in the Super Bowl, but knowing those guys and catching passes from Patrick Mahomes, is that kind of who you lean towards in this game?
Yeah, I'm for sure 100% rooting for the Chiefs. Selfishly, because that means they'll win 3 in a row, and I'll be a part of that dynasty. So, right. So selfishly, I am rooting for those guys. But I think that they'll pull it off. That's who I'm rooting for. And like I said, those are my brothers, man. I spent 2 years there, made a bunch of plays, and won 2 Super Bowls. And so, I got a lot of, blood, sweat, and tears, into that place, and I'm rooting for those guys.
It's been argued that the Eagles may have the deeper roster, more talented roster, but the Chiefs got the guy. They got the guy in Patrick. What makes Patrick so special?
Man, I think he just knows how to win. His competitive nature, that's just one of those things that you just can't recreate. He just doesn't make the mistake when the other team needs him to make the mistake, and I think that is like the difference. When the team has the Chiefs on the ropes, he just doesn't make the mistake and give the team the momentum to keep going. And you can't put him away. The only way you put him away is by beating him by 30 points. Like anything else,
and he
man,
still might come back,
and it's gonna be close. Like you literally got to beat him by 30 to guarantee you win the game. Like anything else, it's gonna be a dog fight.
Hey, Sean, real quick, Lux Fashion Fest.
Oh yeah.
Quick plug for you?
Yeah. So back home in my hometown, in the Tampa Bay area, I do a fashion show, and it's to give creators a space that don't have the platform that I may have. And it's something that I take a lot of pride in. It's my second season doing it, and I get a bunch of my NFL friends to come out. They walk in my show.
That's cool.
So it's a cool little thing that I'm trying to grow, and me being into the fashion space that I'm in, it's been a big thing for me, and I'm just grateful that people are supporting it.
Are you big into fashion? You're a big fashion guy?
Huge into fashion. I just got back from Paris Fashion Week.
Oh, wow.
I'm heading out to New York Fashion Week here in a couple days, so I'm big into the fashion space.
There's been a lot of discourse in the fashion scene about athlete diamonds compared to rappers diamonds. They say y'all diamonds be dancing a little different.
Yeah, it's a tad bit, man. I can't speak about where they get their jewelry from, but I know my jeweler down in Jacksonville, Saki, always get me right. So.
All right. Well, look, I know you got to run around. I know it's a busy day for you today. We appreciate you squeezing in some time for us.
Yes, sir.
Marquez Valdes-Scantling, joining the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. Thank you, sir.
Anytime.
All right. Andre Johnson Jr. is with us. You might also recognize this man. This is Brooks Kubena for The Athletic. Covered the Philadelphia Eagles for The Athletic. He was covering the Houston Texans, then went over to the Philadelphia Eagles, and he's here to help us break down the matchup, but also what you guys want to know about, hopefully, the next Saints head coach, and Kellen Moore. Brooks, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I mean, this is awesome. First Super Bowl I ever covered. And it's a long time for me. I actually lived in Baton Rouge covering LSU 5 years ago. It's been that long since the national championship at the Superdome. So any team plays a championship in the Superdome, I guess I got to cover it.
Yeah, you got to be there. It's only right. It's a tradition at this point. And the last game you went to in the Dome that was a championship, it ended up pretty well for the home team. So
yeah, it's my success, right? That's really what it is.
Why don't we start right there? Because you've been covering the Eagles, and we saw the Eagles back in week 3 when they came here. Yeah. And I got to tell you, when I saw that team, that looked like a team that was on the cusp of maybe even firing their head coach if they hadn't won. And the Saints at that time were 2-0. They were playing great football. And then all of a sudden, Dallas Goedert breaks free. And then Saints season went like this. And it kind of felt like Eagles found themselves a little bit in that week. What did you see from that game in particular that may have been a springboard for their success this year?
What's interesting, I was just remembering the Eagles didn't score until the fourth quarter of that game.
That's right.
And at that time, the Saints were averaging 45 points from the first
Yes.
two games, and absolutely the changes. I mean, at that time, we were looking at it. You have to kind of start at the offseason prior. The Eagles were 10-1 and then went into their collapse, and then the entire city of Philadelphia wanted to fire Nick Sirianni, and he had to overhaul his staff, and he made two pivotal changes on his staff. Offensive coordinator Kellen Moore on defensive side, Vic Fangio, and then Howie Roseman, the general manager of the Eagles, has just the heater of his career in signing Saquon Barkley, and then Zach Bond, who people
One of the Saints
who watch the
legend,
Saints.
Zach Bond.
So they go into that first game in Sao Paulo, even before they play the Saints, and they did not look good defensively.
Right.
This was a scheme and system that they really liked. Vic Fangio served as an analyst on the 22 staff, and they wanted to hire him, but in a long story, Jonathan Gannon leaves for the Cardinals unexpectedly, and then they were left holding the bag and hired Sean Desai, who was under Vic Fangio beforehand. And you were watching it play out again. You're like, oh, again, is this really not really working out? And Zach Bond, who had never played inside linebacker before, had played edge rusher, and Howie Roseman brought him to Vic as a guy who said, I think he can play edge. Vic saw him as an inside linebacker in that. And when the Packers were running all over them, I went to Zach Bond. I was like, so what happened out there? And he's like, cut blocks. It's like, have you never seen a cut block before? Well, he's not like that.
Right.
And I watched the tape. I was like, that's true. So against the Saints, watching him, and they handled the run really well. I went up to him afterwards, like, you handled that cut block, man. You could see, like, because that was what they were trying to do, and they hampered down there. The offense still wasn't there yet. A.J. Brown, star wide receiver for the Eagles, was not playing in that game.
That's right.
And that's where I was kind of holding back, wondering about the offense. They were still figuring things out. They were missing some key players like that. And really, the next week is where things really got bad. They got absolutely throttled by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they go into the bye week, and everybody's wondering if this whole thing's going to go down the tank and if Sirianni's going to get fired. But that main part of the season, that Week 5 bye week, Jalen Hurts calls Nick Sirianni, Kellen Moore, they spent throughout the week, and leaning into what can we do differently on the offense. Enter Saquon Barkley, enter leaning into the run, and they've been on this fantastic run the rest of the way.
Right. And you mentioned Saquon Barkley, and when you look at Kellen Moore and his time in Dallas, he kind of went away because before he got the reins, it seemed like they kind of ran that offense through Ezekiel Elliott. And before that, DeMarco Murray. When Kellen Moore got the reins, it became, we're going to air it out with Dak Prescott. Now you see him a few years later in Philadelphia, and like you mentioned, he has really leaned into the ground and pound game, the good old-fashioned hand the ball to Saquon Barkley and let him do what he does. How much does that show a sign of growth?
It's a lot, because it kind of shows how useless my off-season research is, because I'm looking at all those trends. I'm like, okay, so the Eagles might do more under center and then the more traditional wide receiver routes, and then now they look like the freaking wishbone. But that's the main thing. And whenever they played the Cowboys for the first time in the season, I went and I talked to about every assistant coach that Kellen Moore had either played under or worked with. And the key thing that they said is some coaches connect by being emotional or, connecting with players in other ways. His deal is getting them excited about the plays that work for them. He'll come to them with the playbook, say, hey, what do you want to run? Does this work for you? And that bye week, listening to offensive linemen like Landon Dickerson or Lane Johnson and saying, we want to punch them in the mouth. Let's run the ball. And now they're running the ball more than any Eagles team has since 1978. And it would have been 1951 had they not chucked the ball in a meaningless game at the final end of the year. And when you think about his next step as a head coach, and if you look at what the Saints have, I think that's a major sign of growth for a coach to say, all right, do I have Saquon Barkley on this team? No. Do I have the offensive line that I had in Philly?
Absolutely
not.
No.
But he's going to go to each of the players, and it's going to be a different kind of look than what he would have done in Philly. So I wouldn't look into it with the things that he did this year. There are schemes and systems and concepts that might work, but that's his third job now as an offensive coordinator, was with the Chargers beforehand, and even that looked a lot different. So he's proven in many different spots that he can adapt and connect with players, and that's all offensive coordinators are trying to do.
There's a big word down here ever since DA got fired, and really since the season's come to an end, and we all do our pods, we all do what we're looking for in the next Saints head coach. The word coach with a presence has come up a lot down here. Is Kellen Moore the type of guy that has sort of a presence when he walks in a room? Is he more of a cerebral guy? He doesn't come across as a rah-rah guy.
No.
Is he more of like a sincere guy, a listener type? How would you describe it and how you've gotten to know him, just his presence?
So I'll say it like this. The Eagles' offensive coordinator job last year was not going to be an easy job for anyone because Nick Sirianni was a year removed from going to the Super Bowl and had to go through a bit of a humbling to fire his staff, and he had to bring in somebody to come in with new ideas, and that's humbling for any coach. And then you're going into the guy wants to stick to a lot of things. He did well to get to the 22 Super Bowl. Kellen Moore is not an abrasive coach. He's not someone that will be overly emotional or, the rah-rah type. Working in a collaborative situation like that requires someone who can listen. And kind of going back to what I was just saying before, going to players and saying, hey, what do you want to do?
Right.
Someone who listens and is, I wouldn't say quiet. He is talkative. I don't think he raises the timbre of his voice, but he definitely knows a lot of information and has a lot of, I talk to the quarterback room a lot throughout the year, and they enjoy, talking about the past and looking at the film and the things that they can work together with. So, rah-rah guy, no. But I think what you're trying to find in a coach is someone that's going to get the most out of your players on the field and is not and the other thing about it is with Jalen Hurts, in players that are your best players that are very invested in it are going to give you a bit of pushback. Why? Hey, do you think this is the best thing for me? Right. Is this going to work out? There are people that will do that. A.J. Brown, every offensive player is very invested in what they've tried to do. Is the coach going to double down and be like, no, this is what I'm going to do? Right. Or they're going to take it, listen, and then play it into the game. I was actually talking to Aaron Moorhead, the wide receiver coach, the Eagles. So they run the ball a ton. But you need a rhythm. You need to get your wide receivers some touches. So Aaron Moorhead will actually go up to Kellen in the middle of the game and say, hey, it's been a couple drives since AJ's got a target.
Give him a touch. Right?
Get him a touch. Yeah. Can you work that into it? And Kellen will do it, which is a very difficult thing where you're trying to win a game. You're like, hey, this is not the time, man. It's second and one. We got to go.
Right.
But he works that in and accomplishes two things. One, whenever it's 4th and 5 and the game's on the line, you got to get to AJ. He's ready and he's not cold from earlier in the game. And also he's not, and this is in Aaron Moorhead's words, you don't want them stewing on the sideline. Right. So they're all invested, they're all there, and he's done a great job of that throughout the year.
And that to me is what I'm sensing is his best quality is his versatility. Even with all the rushing touchdowns that Jalen Hurts gets from what's been dubbed the tush push, he wasn't running that in Dallas or the Chargers, but he gets to Philly and he says, you know what, this is what's working, we're going to lean into this. His offensive lineman talked to him, hey, we need to hand the ball to Saquon. It's working, we're going to keep doing this. Getting the ball to A.J. Brown. So just a mix of new ideas from him, but also the humble ability to listen to those around him and really lock into okay, we're going to try those ideas too instead of being so stuck in his ways.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be bringing the brotherly shove to New Orleans.
I don't know if I want to see Derek Carr, doing that one.
It takes I don't know if he can squat 600 pounds like Jalen Hurts can. So
maybe just a wheel route to Alvin Kamara would be good.
That would be perfect. But that kind of leads me into my next question because I'm a little bit of a film geek, film nerd. So you said you watch a lot of the film. So I'll get a little X's and O's on you here. Watched a few things with Kellen Moore offense, what he brings, and I just go back to that Dallas Goedert play against the Saints.
Yep.
Is he really that high on the mesh concept, the bunch pass? Is that his signature play, the mesh concept?
It's one of them. It's one of them. And if you look at the Cleveland Browns game, the tight game they almost lost, a game that the fans were not happy with Sirianni and chanting to fire him. Right. One of the pivotal plays in that was a mesh route with Devontae Smith coming across a 45-yard touchdown that broke the game away. Why that worked for the Eagles is because if you're running the ball a ton with Saquon, you're creating some one-on-one matchups in man coverage. And whenever you get that, and you know a guy is going to be following across the field, you can create those loose-end plays, and Dallas Goedert got that there. That's one thing that we see a lot. And I don't know if it depends on what kind of offense who's there, but definitely in his pocket for sure. One of the things that I think is interesting about the way Jalen Hurts has been set up in the pocket, they've given him a little bit of freedom. So to know whenever he sees A.J. Brown in man-on-man coverage, he can change a play and go to him. Because A.J. Brown's one of the best one-on-one receivers in the league, so they want to be able to exploit that. So they go to that. those kinds of plays, are more planned and going into those situations. But that kind of goes back to his time, as you were saying, Dallas. Being able to chuck the ball around with Dak Prescott. Those things are in his pocket too. And I remember after the Panthers game, because the passing was not very good throughout that. And going into the next week against the Steelers, I was asking Kellen Moore about like what needed to go better, and it almost seemed like he was kind of frustrated at the question, because he's like, really, it is a week-to-week situation. Right. He's like, that's not what worked, man. Like, we were going for this, and then against the Steelers, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith both go off for 100 yards. Like, I always thought, and I described it like this, there was a game plan collecting dust on a shelf that, okay, this time we do chuck the ball around. Right. But it wasn't going to be around for this. And all of a sudden you reach into the bag and boom, you've got, the pivotal play to Goddard or to Devonta Smith, and that works.
And one thing that you just refreshed my memory on, there was a point in the season where A.J. Brown was asked, about the offense, what's the problem with the offense?
Passing.
And he said passing. Yeah. And that made so many national waves, and at the time it felt like it might break this Eagles offense apart. No. A.J. Brown might get shipped off, but somehow they were able to even become closer off of that. Is that something you can kind of attribute to Kellen Moore's leadership?
No, that whole situation requires a lot of context. Mm-hmm. So like A.J. Brown last year was kind of under the spotlight too. Here's how I'll describe it. So A.J. Brown, as I said earlier, is probably the best. If you're going to draft and start over with the team, it's arguable that you would pick him as your first wide receiver. And the argument that it's a debate is probably what would bother him. Yeah. Because in this offense, you're not going to see A.J. Brown put up, Tyreek Hill numbers, at least this year. And Jalen Hurts is an excellent quarterback, but he's not going to have the full range of some other quarterbacks who are in different systems. So whenever the isolation of the passes when you need them, there's more weight on them because there are fewer. And in that game, they weren't delivering. And like I was saying earlier with Aaron Moorhead and saying, look, he needs a rhythm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whenever that time finally comes and then the pass is not there, or Jalen misses him, the frustration is at the situation. Right. And Jalen just so happens to be the quarterback. Whoever else, it's not a personal situation, it's at the whole thing. And the camera zeroed in on this wide receiver, which I feel has become kind of a cliche situation. Oh, look at the Terrell Owens on the field going nuts. And then he's kind of a person that manifests his frustrations physically, and he's trying to contain himself at his locker. Yeah. And it was a one-word, monastic syllable passing. And that was it.
Set the sports world on fire.
Everybody, Philly is such an attraction of drama, and it gets created. And A.J. Brown himself, I think this is an interesting too. Last year, in the offseason, while everything was stewing and everybody wondering if Sirianni was going to get fired and who was going to go where, A.J. Brown called in to the local radio station himself to clear that, because they were like, is A.J. Brown leaving or whatever? He picks up the phone, calls them, and says, all right, so what do you want to know? I love it here. I want to stay here. And then sure enough, a couple of months later, he signs an extension through 2028. So a lot of that was overblown. It kind of goes to what, the offense, what they were running and the timing and all of that. So.
Sometimes that position too, that wide receiver position, just gets a lot of attention.
With that tag a lot.
Well, Brooks, you've been fantastic, but I got to get you out of here on this. You're here to cover a game. We're talking a lot about Kellen Moore, but you're here to cover a game. I want to ask you who wins. I want to ask you, since you cover the Eagles, how do the Eagles win? If we were talking Monday morning, Eagles, got their revenge on the Chiefs, how did they do it?
The Eagles have not turned the ball over once in the playoffs, and their defense has collected 10 turnovers. So I know it's cliche to hear coaches say the turnover margin, but it leans in the way they built this team. They have a run-oriented system that can control the clock. They lead the league in time of possession margin. And Jalen Hurts is playing a more conservative role where he will take sacks sometimes instead of chucking the ball on a third down, and then all of a sudden it's an interception. Chances are if they punt, they'll get the ball back because the defense top-ranked, and they're collecting turnovers. I think the way that they play this game, you've seen the Chiefs be in close games and situations. The Eagles, I think, can take a lead. And at the end of it, this is how I think it plays out. I think they can, if they play things right for the Eagles, they could be up 2 scores with 2 minutes to go. And that's the only time that Patrick Mahomes can't kill you. Right. So I've got a score of 33-31, and I'm saying that only because I think the Chiefs get the ball last and they score to bring it within that. And then I think that's the way they win this game. They stick to what they do well. They control the ball. Saquon plays well against behind an offensive line that he chose specifically to come run the ball behind, and the defense does what it does.
Line it up and play. I'm ready for it. Brooks Kubena, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you, bro. All right, Andre, we put the work in today. Drew Brees, Jimmy Graham, MVS, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and Brooks Kubena. A lot of information, a lot of walks down memory lane, a lot of reminiscing. It's been a great week down here at Radio Row.
Yeah, because we got Marcus Colston earlier this week. We got Jermon Bushrod earlier this week. Holt the Mayo. Just so many cool Saints super fans, so many former players. We got some current players and Bub Means as well. So it's really been fun here on Media Row. Honestly, this is my first time covering a Super Bowl, and this is a week I'm never going to forget.
And one thing I got to say this, and we're not just saying this because we're New Orleans guys. Every person we've talked to, New Orleans should host it every year. It's been fantastic.
They're loving
Talk
it
about
down
how
here.
Proximity, the weather, everything. So New Orleans has really knocked it out of the park this week. Speaking of this week, that'll do it for us this week, at least on the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. We got a lot of work to do on TV Saturday and Sunday, but for now, he's Andre Johnson Jr. I'm Sean Fazende. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.